Generating enough revenue to sustain a living is arguably one of the most fundamental business strategies for any artist entrepreneur. Yet, what fans love the most about their favorite artists is their authenticity. How do you balance making a living while staying true to yourself? And what internal compass do you use in order to navigate your career and artistic practice? In this episode, I'll be speaking with JUNO award-winning hip-hop artist Shad. This is the Industry Insider video series. Welcome to the Industry Insider video series presented by Music Canada and Connect Music Licensing. I'm Domanique Grant and I am your host. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now, over the last few weeks, we have done a deep dive on navigating Canada's music ecosystem as artist entrepreneurs. If you haven't already, please check out our other episodes. We'll leave a link in the description. You can also check them out on the current platform that you are on. I am really excited to welcome our final guest of the series. Since 2005, Toronto-based hip-hop artist Shad has released 6 studio albums, 4 of which have landed on the Polaris Music Prize shortlist. This includes 2010's TSOL, which landed him his first JUNO award for Rap Recording of the Year. You'll also know him as the host of Peabody-award-winning docu-series Hip Hop Evolution, which aired its 4th season on Netflix earlier this year. Shad's unparalleled lyricism, community commitment, and his devotion to hip-hop have landed him fans across the globe. And I am just really excited to have a great one-on-one conversation with him. Shad, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Dom.
So I want to rewind a bit and I want to talk a bit about your childhood because I really think that those years inform a lot of who we are. Can you talk to us a bit about if you've always had the creative drive?
Yeah, it's funny looking back because when I was a young kid, let's say 6 or 7 years old, I had a best friend in school and all we would do is make up stories, try to make each other laugh with skits and stories and songs and parody songs. Like my journals in grade 1 were like parody songs, like Weird Al type of stuff. So yeah, actually like looking back, that's always what brought me joy is just kind of like creating and making people enjoy themselves.
When people asked you what you wanted to be when you grew up, how did you answer that question? And today, what would you have to say about it?
So, okay, yeah, fast forward many, many years, and when it was kind of time to start to pick a career path, I was really on my way to something much more conventional, I guess you could say. I finished high school and I was going into university to study business and anticipated that would sort of be my life. But these things that are deep within us, they have a way of surfacing. You know, I was fortunate to have certain opportunities in high school, writer's craft class, certain things, and just freestyling and stuff with friends as well. It just kind of like awakened this passion that I kind of spoke about earlier that had always been in me to just create and tell stories. So that ended up changing my trajectory. So I guess what I'd say to answer your question, if people were to ask me around 18, 19, what I thought I would do when I would grow up, I thought I would get a job somewhere and make a living. But that changed for me, obviously. And I think what changed was, first of all, discovering that I have this real drive to tell stories. And secondly, realizing that you don't have to pick one thing like that. That question of what are you going to be when you grow up, it implies one thing. And I think that comes from the way things were. You know, my parents or most people's parents kind of had one job or one career, and that's just not really the way things are anymore. And so I think I kind of decided to take a little bit of a different approach when it comes to work. Again, around that age, like 19, 20, I kind of decided what I'm going to do is instead of focusing on this question of what I'm going to be, this like big overarching like title over myself and over my work, I decided I'm just going to commit to projects. You know, what really the question for me became, what do I want to do now? And so at that time it was record an album. So I started embarking on the journey of doing that. And then when that was done, it was promoting that album and touring and just having some fun experiences in music. So I'm being a bit long-winded, but yeah, that question of what do you want to be when you grow up, I think it still trips people up. It's still a huge weight on young people, and I think there's sometimes a simpler way to think about it that can be helpful.
I had a very similar path in that I actually didn't really start out as an artist or as a singer-songwriter. I also thought, because I had so many skills, I started out actually in theater, and then I was traveling the world as a speaker. And when I was about 19, I got asked to go to Uganda to live and to do an internship for school at the time, but that really informed my whole life. I think that I really struggled with whether I wanted to be a recording artist, whether I wanted to work with communities and use the arts, and I felt like there was this huge pressure to decide. And I think it's actually a bit of a problem that we don't give people the openness to just be and to just experiment and to just explore, because I think one of my mentors taught me this, and they were just like, the next best step is always the next best step. Just take the first step, and that's the next best step.
It's really tricky. It's like a challenge, I think, of being a young adult is like, on one hand, focusing your energies and kind of committing to at least a certain amount of time and energy devoted to a thing. But on the other hand, like holding your whole future a little bit more loosely and kind of going, I don't know where this is going to lead exactly, but like I am committed to these next couple of steps.
And one of the things that has happened to a lot of artists is they've actually been stuck in, where they are from, or in allowing their past to keep them really stagnant as an artist. You've managed to, use your past, where you're from, to influence your work, but not to be defined by it. Can you talk a bit about how you've been able to do that?
I've tried to avoid having a label over top of my head, just for myself. I understand other people have labels, and that's actually part of the work and part of the marketing is these labels. But like for myself, I've never imposed any career or title on myself. So that's allowed me a bit of freedom to pursue different things. But the second part is even deeper than that, and that's like a lot of personal work to not define yourself in an even deeper way, by success or by failure or by, career title, job title, and these sorts of things. That's even a deeper, like, personal work to sort of like understand that who you are is more than your work. Because I think both of those pieces will kind of like free you to try different things.
I want to talk about this concept of an internal compass. I think that I have always really worked on finding that internal compass when I need to make decisions, and a lot of the artists that I know also, it's one of the things that they look and work toward developing throughout their whole careers. One of the ideas of this internal compass and trusting yourself to make decisions for me has been rooted in conversations about fear. The thing that I've always asked myself whenever it comes to an internal compass has been challenging my fears and being like, okay, is this a decision that you're making based on fear? Or I ask what, Michael Beckwith refers to as an empowering question, and I say, are you making this decision based on the highest vision that this planet has for your purpose on this planet? And those are the two questions that I've led myself to asking whenever I'm not doing what I should be doing, whenever something really intimidates me and really scares me. I generally have to ask myself these questions to really, really, really get to the core of trusting my intuition and of making sure that I'm doing what I should be doing in order to move forward in my career. Can you talk to us about how you've managed to navigate your internal compass throughout your career, if you have a framework for this, and at what point in your career did you really become clear on what this looks like?
For me, it's changed with every project, like what's driving it, what my inspiration is, and what's helping me overcome the fear. I think it's been different with every project. With some of the albums, it's just been like what's helped me overcome has been just the joy of getting to make music, and just kind of the sense of this album is something that I'm doing because it's a privilege to make music and it's a joy to make music, and I'm just trying to make songs that are good and, you know, have a certain spirit and message. And other times there's a very specific vision for the album, and I'm really motivated through the fear to bring that vision to life. But ultimately, I think if there's a common denominator, at this point, I would say the common denominator for me, what motivates me, what allows me to push through the fear, is a couple of things. Joy, if there's some enjoyment, you know, something just genuinely fun about the project. And secondly, if it's going to help, I'm really motivated. I think more and more as I grow older in life and move on in my career, I'm really motivated by, is this going to help? Is this going to contribute something? I feel a little bit past the stage of, I need to tell my story. I feel like I'm lucky enough that I've gotten to tell my story quite a bit. And now I'm really motivated by, like, is this fun? And is this helping? And looking at everything through those questions kind of helps me push through the other challenges, the external challenges and the internal challenges.
I think that we're in a time right now where a lot of people are trying to figure out what they want to do, how to, if they have to manage multiple hats, make it something that they enjoy. And I wonder if we can just talk a bit about that space and maybe what you'd have to say for anyone trying to find other pieces of what they do that make them happy, as opposed to juggling multiple things just because you need it out of necessity.
Get back to first principles. Like, what's driving you? What's driving you? For me, again, at this point, it comes down to joy, trying to be helpful. These are the things that kind of motivate me, or can motivate me to do something. And I'll try to make decisions about what I'm doing based on that. But of course, there's also just like life concerns. Everybody has to make a living. So we all make decisions around that as well. Almost goes without saying. So yeah, I think you got to go back to that with all the decisions about what you're going to do. That's one thing I think is important to say, is like, yeah, just sort of like having that compass, having that code for yourself, and being able to go back there and being able to articulate that to your team, if you have a team, so that they understand where you're coming from with your decisions. I think it's also worth saying, because you started your last question with talking about how the benchmarks have changed, and the industry definitely has changed a lot. It's changed throughout my career, like the 15 or so years that I've been doing this. Nothing's been the same for longer than like a couple of years. So I think there's a couple things to note with that. One is we can't become attached to these benchmarks. It's like almost reinforced by how much our industry changes. Like, we can't tie our identity to these benchmarks because they can just disappear. And then who are we? So we got to be rooted in something deeper than those benchmarks, as far as success goes and as far as, you know, who we are goes. And secondly, I think it's okay also to, while we are working hard, to like be critical of the industry and to challenge the models and the structures and the institutions that exist, you know, around what we do as creators. So there's a lot there.
Collaboration has been a hallmark of your career. I want to know, do you seek out collaborations? Do they happen organically? And can you please talk about the collaboration with K Tronada, because we all benefited.
Thank you. Collaboration is such an interesting thing in music or in creative work in general, because you have to have a vision. Obviously, a vision has to come from somewhere, and you got to like try to pursue that. But also, stuff is just better together. Stuff is just better with other people's inputs and with other people's skills. And so my philosophy to a great extent with collaboration is like, there's one person who's going to be driving it, and then other people are helping. So if it's my own album, for example, I try to be driving that thing and then create some space for other people to help and for other people to, add to it and make it something more than it could be. And if I'm helping somebody else on their song or their album, I try to come in with the mindset of like, I'm not driving this thing. I'm sort of serving that person's vision. So that's how I approach collaboration for the most part. And yeah, one of the great gifts of making music for me has just been collaborating with people and getting to watch them be great. K-Tronada, I think, is like a generational talent. There's a vibe in his music that you just don't get in a lot of places and that we all love. There's something like really fundamentally what music is about in the music that he makes. There's a joy to it and a bounce and a soulfulness. So, getting to connect with him and make something, that's just like an incredible privilege and honor. And other folks I've seen in the studio too, just see singers just crush it, or see a guitar player just be great, be who they are, use their voice as an artist through their instrument. It's just one of the most beautiful things you can ever be around.
How do you balance making a living with staying true to yourself?
When I started making music, it was almost a decision to prioritize that over making money. It was almost like that's implied in this decision that I've made to like put a lot of time and energy into music and to try and do it professionally. It's like almost implied in that was like I'm deciding not to make money the priority. And so I've just always tried to keep that in mind, as my career has gone on, to just sort of say, I got into this because I care more about being able to be myself and tell my story than sort of more conventional, stable paths to income. I also believe in approaching this creative work like in a professional way. I try to really be a professional about it. I try to approach it like work. I work from 10 to 6 every day, and I have a team, and when I make something, I try to present it in a way that's professional. I would say those are the two main things as far as trying to balance and then there's little decisions all along the way, right? All the time there's little decisions about what to do, whether to, take on a project or a performance or something. And you're weighing money in the equation. That's part of approaching it professionally, I think. But the main thing I try to keep in mind is I started doing this because I wanted to do this, not because I wanted to make a fortune. So
if anyone's like trying to understand whether or not they should pursue their dreams right now, it's just like it literally will impact you later on in your life if you do not fulfill your calling. It's not just about like fear, if you need to push through fear, but it's also just like there's a ceiling, as you're saying, to what we can and can't do, and things that are not necessarily our calling, but our calling will impact lives, and it'll also eat you away later in your life if you don't pursue it. So pursue it.
Yeah, no, I love what you just said there, because there really is two pieces to that, right? There's like the personal, it will eat away at you. You will regret not trying. And secondly, there's an impact to other people. If you're not being your best every day, trying your best every day, there's an impact to other people. So it's like, it's personal, but also it's a responsibility, I think, to other people.
What are you excited about for the next generation of hip hop artists coming out of Canada?
The thing I'm most excited about is the fact that a lot of the barriers that existed when I started, as far as like sharing your music internationally especially, are gone. So there's so many more platforms, the internet obviously becoming what it is. There's just so many more platforms to like share music, to get new inspiration as well. So there's just a lot of opportunities for artists now in Canada and hip hop to find their audience on these like many different platforms, and share their music internationally and really come out of the gate strong and start a career. Also, the perception of Canadian music and Canadian hip hop has changed dramatically. So I think new artists are gonna benefit from that, and are benefiting from that change in perception. People think Toronto is cool, frankly, and want to hear what's new coming out of the city. So those are wonderful things I'm really, really excited about. The challenge with having all these different platforms is that there's no clear model or pathway as far as like establishing a career. That is a challenge. Cutting through the noise is a challenge. That's a new challenge. So there's all these opportunities. With them come some new challenges too. But I think the next generation is like they're born into this world. They understand it. So I think they're going to be able to navigate it as well as anybody can.
We have faith in you, next gen. We have faith in you.
We have faith in you for sure.
Yeah, and I'd say, I mean, I agree. I think on the side of that too is, you know, artists are finding really creative ways to push through the noise. It's not easy for everyone, but I think again, like a key thing throughout this has just been like really focus on what you have control over, focus on creating meaningful stuff that resonates with you, and do what you can, you know, where you are. And I feel like this is a much larger topic, you know, to expand on at another point. One of the things that I'm really curious about is your lyrics have tackled a lot of social and political issues. You've also really highlighted underrepresented communities. Can you speak to the social responsibility that you feel that artists have and that human beings have?
Well, growing up, I was really inspired by artists like Lauryn Hill, artists like Common, artists like Outkast, like some of the first Razzcast. Like these were the first times I ever heard people, artists, talk about really deep personal things and talk about things like well beyond themselves as well, like talk about issues in their community, political issues, and somehow bringing that into music that was still dope and fun to listen to. So when I started making music, you know, that's in my DNA. That's the stuff that really changed my life, I guess you could say. And so I've always felt like that's part of what really makes music powerful and meaningful, as much as I also love to like have fun in my music and bring enjoyment into people's lives. That piece of touching on deep things has always been something that's important to me and something that I admire and something that I value. So yeah, I think that's how that came to be like a part of my music. I'm also just very interested in telling my own story, in offering what I have to give, even if it's not telling my own story, just like having something unique to what I'm doing. And to your question about like underrepresented groups, it's like there's this opportunity, I feel like, in Canadian music, because this is such a young nation. It's like we are the artists, especially Black artists in Canada, we're representing new cultural identities that have never been expressed before, that have never been like put on a certain platform before. And there's a really unique opportunity in that to just like represent who we are individually, and as a result represent these these communities and these cultural identities that have never really, you know, been highlighted or showcased. So yeah, that I feel like that's just an extension of the artists that inspired me, you know, when I was a kid. Again, what I loved about them was their ability to touch on deep things and make dope music out of it. And secondly, their ability to be unique. When I heard these albums and these artists that didn't sound like anybody else, that also really put the battery in my back and made me say, what do I have that's different?
I have always struggled as an artist to speak up when my opinion conflicts with popular opinion. And at a moment in time where Black artists are being elevated on such a high platform, where the world is waking up and we're even more woke than ever, my biggest fear was that I would speak up and say the wrong thing, and my opinion would really deflate a movement. And I know that that's a lot, but I started getting asked to appear on TV a lot. I started getting asked to be in these spaces, and often you can't talk about race. Like it wasn't popular for a Black woman of color to be an artist and to be talking about race. No one wanted to hear about it, and all of a sudden people are comfortable with it, sort of. But it created this kind of dialogue where I was like, I don't want to be the voice of everyone. I am the voice of myself.
in any movement, we're all the voice of ourselves. And the idea of speaking up and of saying something that would conflict with popular opinion, I want to know, when it comes to authenticity and being yourself versus it conflicting with popular opinion, how do you push through that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that question, and it makes me think, like, on that topic of responsibility as artists, I think our responsibility is exactly that. It's like to be ourselves and to share our experience and our point of view. Because if we can't, then who else can? I think we really have to take that as a responsibility to say, we have a little bit of freedom to model that for people, to model that freedom. And so, we have to use that. And we have that freedom because we can turn our experiences and our perspective into something beautiful, and not everybody has that ability. So, if we're not taking that responsibility to do that, then I feel like it just doesn't give a lot of hope for everybody else. Well, the cool thing about music, the magic of it, is I think we're able to put stuff out there in a way that people are amenable to hearing. Again, whereas like if you don't have the sort of talents or sensibilities to turn the ugly parts of your life or the harder parts of your life into something beautiful, well then it's harder for people to hear. But we can do that, and that's like such a wonderful creative challenge too, to try and to try to do that, to try to articulate stuff in a way that people will be able to hear. I think a lot of times the key to that is putting yourself into it. People don't want to hear a textbook definition of racism. They want to hear, or they're open to hearing you in your experience. No one can argue with your experience. We have a responsibility to use our voice and to stick our neck out there a little bit. But also that's like, it's a fun creative challenge, to try and like use your voice in a way that will be heard and felt.
This quote that was brought to my attention and that was given to me, which really changed things for me, is the boldest thing that you can be is your most authentic self. And the reason for that is because in this lifetime, if you parade around as someone else and you never find the courage to be you, you never find the courage to wake up and to show who you truly are, one day you'll regret it. One day you will. Because the scariest thing is to put yourself out into the world and to allow people to have something to say about you when you don't have all of the makeup and all of the layers and all of the false things that we have to put on ourselves to protect ourselves. But the most fulfilling part of our lives and the most fulfilling thing is going through life and knowing that you were you and that you could create and you could share that. And I think in our conversation about all of these artists that have shaped music in the 60s, which was just a crazy time, wasn't even that long ago. It was the elements of themselves that were put into these songs. It was their individual and unique stories. It was those vulnerable moments that we all at times got scared to share, but found the courage to share, that connect with whether you're 90 or you're 10 or you're a teenager going through high school, or you're a mother, trying to figure out how you're going to make it tomorrow. It's just there's so many things, but it is the vulnerability underneath it that creates those songs and creates those moments and really helps to build our careers.
Yeah, and the cool thing is I feel like people can feel it in the music. The word I always use is stakes. Like I feel like they can feel when there's stakes in the music, when you are risking something, whether that's creatively, whether that's with the lyrics and putting your story into it. But I just feel like people can tell when there's something at stake for the artist, and that's like one of the most kind of like fundamental, primal things that people resonate with in a song, is when there's something at stake in it for the artist. I think that's true of stories in general. If you watch a movie and the main character is not going on some kind of journey where they're risking something, then it's really just not that interesting. And I think that's just something that's just really felt on a deep level with people. They just respect it.
Yeah, I feel like, a couple of things that have really come up have been themes of courage and themes of pushing through fear. And I think underneath that is vulnerability. And I think that, our vulnerability is really what allows us to write the songs that really challenge people to look within themselves and to dig deep. So we are coming to a close. You have managed to have a pretty fulfilling career and you have balanced both the artistic and the practical. What do you have to leave with artists who are embarking on this journey?
Well, the first thing is like we haven't talked a lot about luck, and I don't want to diminish luck. It's a factor. I really feel fortunate that certain things have just kind of played out well for me, and I've been able to make a lot of things and tell my story and have a lot of really interesting experiences. I don't want to pretend like that this was all my design. So that's the first thing that I'll say. Luck is a part of the equation, and I say that so that hopefully people can relax a little bit and not grip the reins too hard, and just kind of be able to relax and enjoy the journey that they're on. Yeah, I would almost just want to bring it back to the very beginning of the conversation and say, if it's helpful for you, shed this question of like, am I an artist, or what do I want to be when I grow up? And instead really focus on what do I love in a pure way, and why would I not pour time and energy into that? And what do I want to do right now? What do I want to work on right now? What do I want to commit 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years to building and finishing? I would just encourage young people to focus on that. And there's just a tremendous amount of personal satisfaction that comes from that. There's a tremendous amount of growth that comes from that just liberates you to do the next thing and to continue on the journey. So that's what I would love to end with as far as advice.
What is the greatest lesson that you've learned so far?
The greatest lesson. I'm going to tell a basketball story. This maybe isn't like the greatest lesson, but it's the first one that comes to mind. So I remember watching this post-game interview after this overtime win. And they asked the player who won, what part of the winning team, what happened in the game. And what he said was, well, they're a good team, so they went on a run. But we knew that we were a good team, so we knew we would go on a run, and we did. And that tied the game. And then we went into overtime, and one of us won. And I have never forgotten that rundown, because to me, that's like life. That's life. That's a perspective, that's like a mature perspective on life. What happens in life is not just this sort of like straightforward trajectory to victory. It's like ups and downs. And I love this player had this perspective of like expecting the ups and downs. Like these were two evenly matched teams, and he didn't expect that the score would be tied throughout the game and then somebody would win. He was like, no. Like, we knew they'd make a run, meaning at some point they're going to score 15 points in a row and we're going to score 0. And to not get too low during that point. And then also we're a good team, so we knew we'd go on a run. So we'd score 15 points and they'd score 0, and not to get too high and say, oh, we're going to blow these guys out of the water. But that's the expectation. And I just think that's a valuable lesson that has kept coming back throughout my life and career, which is just, you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. You're going to have, runs of things sort of going your way and then runs of things not going your way. And that is life. And to sort of be able to, within those ups and downs, keep taking steps, keep putting one foot in front of the other, keep doing the things you've committed to do. Well, in the end, like he said, in the end, one of us was going to win. Like in the end, it will work out or it won't work out. Yeah, but I just love that perspective, and I believe in that perspective, and that's something that I've seen in my own life as well. It's just sort of like the ups and downs happen. They're going to happen. Nothing is a straight line trajectory of success. But if you can kind of if you can do what you've committed to doing through that, you'll probably end up in a good place.
We all need that reminder to enjoy our process and to take those moments and to understand and prepare for what life is and to allow ourselves to keep going. So I just wanted to thank you for ending on that and for leaving us with that, and also just for all of the tweetables and the incredible moments that you've left in this interview. I really think that people are going to take a lot away from you just being really open and honest, and as we all as artists are trying to like navigate this space. So thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure.